Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. Namo Amida Butsu. Shall we begin Nimbutsu?
Yes. Yeah, we seem to, we keep trying to remember to do that, and we seem to be forgetting of late. So yeah, let's start with that. Definitely.
All right. Let's gasho. Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo. 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 Namo.
Of course, never forget what the meaning of Nimbutsu is.
No, never forget. I meant forgetting to do it in the beginning of our we wanted to try to establish the sort of habit or kind of start to our videos where we always begin and end with that. And sometimes we remember, sometimes we don't. So we must try to be more conscientious about that. So thank you for doing that. But yes, so interesting topic.
So yeah, it's an interesting topic. Very good topic. Very important topic. We should probably give the disclaimer right away that we are not advocating for or against any particular method of recovery or addiction treatment.
Yes.
We are simply discussing these topics. So if anyone discovers this video or watches this video, these are some topics regarding recovery in Buddhism, but we're not making any medical claims. And also,
yes.
if someone does have serious problems, addiction, they need help, get help. That's the first thing. So there are hotlines, there are phone numbers. We should probably even put them at the bottom of the video, whether it's governmental or public services, private services, or a church or a mosque or a synagogue or a temple. Just don't suffer alone. Get the help you need is the first thing I want. That being said, let's talk about Buddhism and Shinshu.
Yeah, exactly. Good statement. I didn't really. I'll probably put a disclaimer on my other video along that line, just in the description of it that I posted yesterday. Because I definitely agree with you that and I think I mentioned in there that something along the lines of, because I have a family member who is just at their beginning of their kind of starting to really look at, okay, I need to do something about this type of thing.
Yeah,
I don't know whether they're ready to actually stop yet or not, or but they're starting to examine it, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. It's the questions in there, the concerns in there. So what I said in that video was that I'm putting together things for them from all, from everything that I've utilized in the past, and let them make the choice. Whatever my personal preferences are, whatever my sort of view is on what is effective or what is not for me, is irrelevant. I'm just making them, that all the different, there's many different groups besides the 12 steps, I've talked to them about 12 steps, but there's also smart recovery, rational recovery that I mentioned in my other video. There's life ring, so rational recovery, smart recovery, life ring, and similar ones are all non-religious, unlike the 12 steps. 12 steps is spiritual, is a spiritual path, is very religious, no matter what they say that it's not, but it is very spiritual, and it has its own religiosity to it. So you kind of have to be, I just think, be prepared for that. I'm not saying it's not helpful, that somebody might not benefit from that, but you need to be aware it is very of a certain type of spirituality, even though they say, well, anybody can, but it's, there's anyway. So, but whereas these other groups are not spiritual in nature, they're spiritually neutral.
Yeah.
Some of the some of the people that use them may not be neutral. They may be very anti religion, which that becomes, a lot of atheistic kind of, which that can be, that's the other side of the coin. Whereas Buddhists trying to go to a 12-step group, you've got the spirituality that really isn't necessarily that's mostly the vast majority of people talking there. I'd say 95% of it really isn't compatible with Buddhism.
Right.
And then on the other hand, you have people in these groups, they're very anti-religious and very atheistic. And so that's the flip side of Buddhists trying to go to those groups, because you're kind of, well, anyway. So, but anyway, what I'm trying to say is I'm making all that available to them. And that's what I think people should just have the choice. That's all I think.
Right.
I may have my feelings about which is the most effective, as far as what I can see, in it. But everyone should have the choice. Everyone should know these are all out there available. But anyway, so I did kind of, allude to that, I think, in my previous video. But I will put I think I will put a very similar disclaimer in the description that you gave at the beginning of this video on my other video. So anyways, having said all of that.
Indeed. So yeah, the 12, I am not, I should first and foremost say, I don't have any experience with recovery programs personally. I've never I've never attended, a recovery program or meeting. Or with regard to well, maybe I should say, personally speaking, I was raised, of course, in a strict Protestant fundamentalist household. So there wasn't, my parents didn't drink alcohol, for example. And, I didn't drink alcohol until I was in college, actually. Interestingly, the first alcohol I drank was Japanese sake. Yeah, a sushi restaurant.
An excellent way to, if you're going to drink alcohol for your first drink, that's not a bad way. That's not bad.
Yeah. And from that point, I more or less, have consumed alcohol to a more or less degree. And since we're talking about substances and craving and all of that, there have certainly been times when I have had more than is good for me. Let's just say.
Yeah.
And I have taken, for example, I took a few months off drinking a couple years ago. I did the no booze November last year, took a month off, no alcohol. It's not a problem for me to stop drinking alcohol for a time. So it's probably not an issue of addiction per se, but it is in Japan, it's very, people drink alcohol. I mean, it's very rare to have someone who doesn't, although, it depends on the person, of course. I think young people tend to maybe not drink as much as their parents did. So in regards to addiction, recovery, that kind of thing, I do think it's a very important topic. I think it's it's relevant to Buddhism, obviously, because of the element of craving and, but I do think any Buddhist approach has to be based on, first and foremost, compassion, rather than judgmental, because there's no judgment in Buddhism. The Buddha is not a judge. Amida Buddha is not a judge. It's so passion has to be first and foremost the base of any recovery kind of program, in my opinion, from a Buddhist point of view. And then the other thing is, I don't necessarily think that the 12 steps program is necessarily incompatible with Buddhism at all. In fact, I did some research in preparation for this episode, and I did find there's a book that apparently is quite well received called The 12-Step Buddhist. And it's basically Dharma-based, sort of Dharma-centered 12-step approach. It's not a replacement for the 12 steps, but it's kind of putting a Buddhist perspective. So we could talk about that as well. I think
I suppose my experience of it, I guess I suppose I should, what I was saying in my videos, that my experience of it is that for me, it's just to me, it's too many hoops to be jumping through. It's too much mental gymnastics to try to kind of patchwork it into Buddhism. For me, that's just for me. Yeah. And also, if you're going to meetings, this is the main issue. If and I actually, for me personally, recovery, I don't find it necessary. Meetings are, in fact, they're counterproductive. For me, that's what I've come to. That's the experience of me that I've come to. But that but if you do go to, when I've gone to meetings, I have gone to a lot of 12-step meetings, a lot, over about a span of about 20 years off and on, I'd say, and then maybe a little bit later on, a bit more, but not much. But it's because of the vast majority of people in those rooms are not talking a spirituality, not talking from a viewpoint or a worldview or a cosmology that's anywhere near compatible with Buddhism. So all you're hearing is all this other talk of, and it's like, in my mind, it's just this whole nother layer of, I'm here trying to, I've got this, the reason I'm here is to quote unquote recover and to deal with my addiction, and all I'm hearing is forms of spirituality that are not just don't gel at all with where I'm coming from as a Buddhist, with my worldview, the cosmology and it just, a lot of times I just start, and then you, in your mind, you just start trying to, you're just like, so to me, it was that's one among many reasons it was counterproductive, 12 steps, especially as a Buddhist. But that's just me personally. I know that there's books, there's many people that have done different, done interpretations of the 12 steps and done, it's just, and it might look good on paper. That's the other thing. It looks good on paper, but the actual execution of it, which is what I've tried, in the past, when I've tried to do it as a Buddhist, and you just end up, anyway, that's just me. That's just my own, but anyway, fair. Please continue though. So.
Well, the point you make is a good one. And it can be distracting. I think probably most people that are going to be obviously not from a Buddhist spiritual background. So they're going to be talking about, God and so on and so forth.
And we don't rely on gods. We do not rely on gods. We do not, gods are just another, and I would hear that. It'd be like, well, they're another samsaric being, in another realm. It's not something that do you know what I mean? I don't rely on them. They're just another fellow being.
Well,
in samsara, type of thing. But anyway, yeah.
I think what at a higher level, what do people mean when you talk about God, right? I had a friend who was ministerial, studying for at Chuo Gakuin in Kyoto, and he's now the minister of a Buddhist temple in Washington. forget which one, Spokane, I think. But anyway, and we were just walking along in Kyoto. Actually, I think we went to Nijo Castle. And we were, discussing Dharma and all kinds of things, having a great time. One thing that came up is he said, I have, when people say, when people ask me, do you believe God? My response is always, well, what do you mean by God? Because if by God you mean an angry judge in the sky who's keeping track of the wrong things you do, then no, I don't believe in that. But if by God you mean a source of compassion and love and boundless light, if that is what you call God, then yes, I do believe in that. So God, of course, is a word, right? But what that word means is, something that can be. I think when Christians or
it's just I don't know. I just personally don't. It is I just see it as different. You know what I mean? Even if you frame it that way and you kind of look at it on a higher level, right. It's like, well, really, they're talking about something different than what Buddha. We don't talk about gods. We don't talk about God. We talk about Buddha nature. No. We talk about, but it's Buddha is a very different thing. Our cosmology, right. The cosmology of the teachings, it's a very different thing. Buddha nature is a different thing than God, or it's totally different thing. And I just, anyway, it's I kind of have I do have some strong views about this aspect of things. If you're a Buddhist, you should be a Buddhist. If you're trying to live your life by Buddhism, you should just try to be a Buddhist. Do you see what I mean?
Absolutely, and I agree. But I think we also have to keep our, hearts and minds open to the possibility of truth, not just as it's contained in words. Yeah. Remember, words are always the finger pointing at the moon. Yeah. And so from that point of view, there's possibilities for people from different faith backgrounds to have, similar experiences of the infinite, the eternal, So, and what do we call in Mahayana Buddhism? Nirvana is what? It's
the cessation of the end of suffering. And it's the beginning.
Right, but in a more positive sense, we also say that it's self, bliss, and there's the 4, marks of nirvana. And so that is, I think, very important to keep in mind. We don't simply have a negative view of nirvana in Mahayana Buddhism. Yeah. There's a positive aspect.
Definitely. Oh yeah, agreed. I'm not. Yeah, it was just going from a starting point there.
Okay. Permanence, bliss, self, and purity. And this is of course, a positive expression of what nirvana is. So permanence means it's not impermanent, right? Not subject to mujo impermanence, right? Change. Self doesn't mean self in the sense of like, the constructed self, but rather self in the sense of freedom, the ability to act freely for the benefit of others, for the benefit of beings, as the Buddha did. And then, of course, bliss, joy, abiding in great compassion and wisdom and the joy of that. And purity, of course, the purity of having purified the kleshas from one's mind stream. That is what is meant by purity. So all I'm saying is that there's a positive aspect of the Dharma body. Of course, when we talk about Dharmakaya, Dharma body, Dharmakaya is the Buddha. The Dharma body is the Buddha, and that body is Nirvana, and that is also Buddha nature. It's also in Shin Buddhism, it's Shinjin. So, it's important to understand, not just to rely on the words. The words, of course, are very important. They're the finger that's pointing us to the moon, but we've got to see the moon. That's the whole point. Seeing the moon. So, but I do agree with you. Any program where culturally people are not Buddhists, they're going to be talking about God and so on, and the way the religious language that they use to understand reality is going to be using, and that can be I think that could be a distraction, especially since in terms of worldview, there are some major incompatibilities between theism and Buddhism in terms of God saving you or helping you, that kind of thing. So but all I wanted to say is, I guess, the 12-step program I don't think is necessarily incompatible with Buddhism. I do think maybe I should share this.
Yeah, like I said, it is for me. It is for me. For others, right. It may not be, but for me, and I know that it's not for others, because I know I'm quite familiar with some of the different, I've read the book, a couple of the books, I've a few of the books that have been written on the subject. I've researched it quite a bit, online. Do you know what I mean? I've tried to do it myself, in the past. So I'm very aware that there are Buddhist interpretations, and that for some people they're able to find it compatibility with it. I just don't, and there's a lot of people who don't, hence, I was talking about how there have grown up out of these other, out of the 12 steps. There are people that were trying, they were trying to kind of do a Buddhist interpretation, but it just didn't quite. So they started their own Buddhist recovery. There's like at least 3 major ones now. There's a Buddhist Recovery Network. There's like 2 others at least now, major kind of programs because they just want to base it solely on Buddhist. So but that so I should always make that disclaimer. For me, it is incompatible, and a lot of other people or there's lots of other people who prefer not having to use the 12-step model to affect their recovery, as a Buddhist type of thing. But so
well,
and I think
there are
go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, no, can I share the screen?
Yeah, sure. Oh yeah, sorry. Let me make it so that you can. Over here.
Okay, I think I can share. Oh, that's not the one I want. Hold on. Okay. Actually, I also did some research of my own and found this is just one example. And actually, the way I found this was Bishop Marvin Harada of the Buddhist Churches of America, in an article on greed, the first of the 3 poisons, greed or craving. he mentions that the Vista Buddhist temple has a very successful Dharma recovery program that is like a Buddhist AA meeting, but Dharma focused. And that's the Vista Buddhist temple, a Jodo Shinshu temple, of course. So they have this Dharma recovery program. It says the primary purpose of Dharma recovery is to offer a Buddhist-inspired path to recovery from unhealthy attachments of all kinds. Any unhealthy thing we do to calm ourselves or escape the pain of the present. In Shin Buddhism, we are invited to self-reflection and come to realize a life in which the Buddha's wisdom and compassion can bring awakening in the midst of everyday difficulties. All are welcome. You do not have to be Buddhist or sober to attend. We meet once a week, either via Zoom or in person, to share our experience, strength, and hope, and to learn to live one day at a time from a Buddhist perspective. So this would be, one example of a Jodo Shinshu recovery program or organization that might be good or helpful, useful for people to check out. Let's see, I think I will stop sharing there. But this is a beautiful
image. It is. It's lovely. It's really lovely. That is one of the major ones I was mentioning. I couldn't remember the name of it. Is Dharma. It's kind of it's probably not international now. They have a book, and I purchased the book at one point for the Dharma recovery, and read through it and things. But so there it is. That is there. What was I going to say? The 12, specifically the 12-step interpretation of it.
I don't know if this is 12-step or
no, that's not. Oh no, that's not. Dharma recovery is not. Dharma recovery is not 12 steps. I just wanted to finish off my point about that. But Dharma recovery. I mean, and then I wanted to go on to say about these Buddhist recovery groups. One of my issues is oftentimes now, obviously, this is in a at a Shin a Shin Buddhist place, but a lot of times with the Buddhist recovery groups, they're very self-power focused, which as a Buddhist for Buddhism, that's as far as a Buddhist recovery, I'd say that's better. That's at least they're in keeping with their Buddhist teachings and beliefs, and do you see what I mean? But as a Jodo Shinshu Buddhist, there's complications with that. Do you see what I mean? And I know that's that particular group was at a Shin Buddhist fellowship. It was held at a Shin Buddhist fellowship, but what actually is talked about in those meetings, about what's the methodology of that they're using. So that's well, that's what I wanted to get to, is kind of for Jodo Shinshu Buddhists, what where or what's the line? Here's the what I want to say is kind of this is, and then all these things. The reason I'm raising this is for my own questions and my own wrestling with it. I still am, to some degree, not with my own recovery. That's done. Okay, but where to fit it into, the ongoing, process of how to view things as a Buddhist, and how, and as a Jodo Shinshu, because where, we have the, we do, there's, and I know we've had discussions about self-power practices, how that, how most of the time we don't, it's just not done. But like, if someone invites you to a Zen Buddhist temple, it's not wrong to go and participate in that. Do you know what I mean? That as long as you're not, as long as you're not thinking that you will gain some merit or some, you know, that will get that will, it will help you become enlightened. You know, we've had discussions about that. But for the most part, we don't, you know, we're not meant to be doing self-power practice, especially as in a self-power way. You know, even if we, like I said, we're invited to something like that, we, you know, we don't do it in a self-powered way. We do it to, you know, we're there to, you know, to you know, make that connection with another Buddhist or, you know, a friend, and, you know, and you know, we're there for other reasons. We're not there to actually do self-power practice. If you see what I mean. I don't know if I've summarized that very well, but like that's the thing. Like how and where's the line? So where's the line? This is the other part of the question. Where's the line of if someone's in recovery and they have to utilize some kind of program to affect their recovery? Where's the line of that two things, where it's using something that's an outside, that's a not really a Buddhist thing, you know, and also a Buddhist, I don't know, a Buddhist technique or a Buddhist technology, if you like, call it that. And where's the line of when you have adopted a methodology, but you want to adapt it to, you know, like for instance, the 12 steps, or in my case, rational recovery, you know, where you want to take it and you're like, that actually is kind of Buddhist, you know, the way that he approaches the internal mechanisms, and examining them and letting them come to the fore, and, you know, just observing it, is, you know, that, you know, and then taking that and using it in, you know, in a Buddhist context. That's what I should say. You know, I said in my video, I don't really use rational recovery, but a truer way to say that would be, I use rational recovery, but in a totally Buddhified version, a totally Dharmified, completely, totally Dharmified version, which is probably significantly different. You know, someone who would just use rational recovery on their own would say it's probably different, but in a lot of ways, no, it's not that different. So, but, you know, so where's that line, you know, of where you're using either, you know, we've talked about these things before, but I haven't gotten really a clear idea of this yet, but where's the line where you're slipping into non-Buddhist ways, or you're slipping into using self-powered methodology, or do you see what I mean?
Well, I don't know that there is a line.
Okay.
To begin with. You are, you know, we are individuals, and we're adults, and we can, you know, try things that may be of benefit, and if they're of benefit, well and good. It doesn't necessarily have to be Buddhist. I mean, if even, you know, what's it called, rational recovery. I mean, if that's a method that works, you don't necessarily have to put Buddhism into it. I mean, if it works for you, it works for you. So there's not a problem there. If
gotcha.
You know, adding, of course, you're going to bring, if you have a Buddhist worldview, you're going to bring that perspective anyway. Right.
I mean, rational recovery is very religiously neutral. They're very, it's a very, but not anti-religious. In fact, it's quite compatible. I would say the rational recovery, interestingly, being so neutral, is probably more compatible with any religious belief system or cosmology than the 12 steps. Because there's no need for any kind of re-engineering it, or reinterpreting it. because it fits the moral aspect of it, the ethic, because that's a big part of rash recovery is, once you realize, okay, this behavior, whatever it is, this me pursuing this substance is harmful to myself and others, it's unhealthy, it's it's just not, it becomes unethical and immoral for me to continue that. That's an important part of it, which is another aspect of the other groups that I'm not as keen on, because I feel like they're very neutral when it comes to it, almost like lets people off the hook a bit. It seems like to me, like it doesn't, they're responsible, yes, for the recovery and yes, things that happen, but in a sense, because it was an addiction, it's kind of not completely their fault. And do you know what I mean? Anyway, sorry, I'm getting off. I'm jumping topic, jumping kind of threads of thought here, but there's so much to unpack with this for me that, yeah.
But okay. So I do have some thoughts. I don't know if immoral is a word that I would use. That doesn't strike me as very Buddhist. And it's not necessarily. I also don't know that we have this concept. So it's possible that in some groups they sort of use guilt as a motivator, but we don't really have that concept.
No, I don't. It's not.
I think you have to recognize the nature of addiction is probably not the person is completely in control, and that goes back to the kleshas and the three poisons, and what Shinran said about how if the karmic conditions and causes are there, even a supposedly good person can do things that aren't helpful and that are hurtful to themselves and to others. So a Buddhist perspective has to kind of recognize the interconnectedness of it's not. So I mean, I know we're raised in a Protestant, Anglo-Protestant background, so taking responsibility and all of that is part of the way we were brought up, because that's our culture. But we have to be aware of the Buddhist the perspective that I think the Dharma brings to an issue like addiction, right? So, and I'm not saying that there's one size fits all approach. I don't think there is. I think there's probably, like you said, you mentioned 12-step didn't work for you. And there's a lot of other, let me, if I can share my screen one more time.
Yeah, I think while you're bringing that up, that's the thing. One of the things that it is another thread of this is that aspect of, how on the one hand, like I was saying, when it comes to addiction, samsara is all about addiction. Samsara is, we were in a discussion once with another Dharma brother where we talked about, I mean, samsara is like, you're choosing which of the three poisons are you going to, are you going to switch between in samsara, which, so it's like, it's all about desire. We live in the desire realm, we live in one of the desire realms. So do you see what I mean? So to me, it's like addiction isn't really anything. Someone who calls himself an addict isn't really anything necessarily special in samsara. There's just, maybe they have an extreme desire, extreme craving for their particular substance or their particular behavior. So to me, it's a kind of which tends to be the opposite with the recovery groups. It's kind of, well, you're different than other people. Do you know what I mean? You're somehow, you've got this problem. Do you know what I mean? It makes you different and special, and you've got these mysterious reasons why you do these things. And, you know, and as Buddhists, they're not mysterious to us. You know, it's not, there's no mystery about it, really, in the teaching anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it is complicated. I think this is an article by a scholar at the University of Chester. And she wrote an article called Kleras and Pretas, Therapy and Liberation in Buddhist Recovery from Addiction. I haven't read the article, but according to the abstract, this article offers an analysis of Buddhist approaches to addiction recovery in the terms of some of the key debates in addiction recovery studies. Buddhist recovery teachings are analyzed for the extent to which they embody models of addiction which construe the problem as a disease, as a moral problem, as a problem of powerlessness, as a problem of control, as a choice, a social or a personal problem, and as continuous or not with putative samsaric experience. I think that was what you were kind of referring to just. And they are also analyzed for the extent to which recovery is modeled as a change of identity or of practices, and how far recovery ideals align with Buddhist soteriology, et cetera, et cetera. So this lady actually gave a talk at the Jodo Shinshu International Center as well on the topic of Buddhism and recovery. And I think, you know, the Buddha, the very, you know, the Four Noble Truths, we've discussed this before, but I think it applies here as well, is that the Noble Truths are essentially modeled on an ancient, you know, prescription, like a doctor's diagnosis.
Yeah, exactly.
So the problem is suffering, and then there is a cause. The problem has a cause. And the problem has a, you know, a treatment, a way out. So
a cessation, and how do you get there? And then the fourth is the method of getting there. Getting to the
right. And so if you look at it that way, I mean, I think the model of seeing suffering, because what addiction causes suffering, the person is suffering. So it's at the very basic heart of, you know, the common philosophy of Buddhism. And so,
and its cause is definitely craving. The cause of that suffering is definitely craving. And the solution definitely is cessation. You know, both in the broader sense, but also in the more immediate sense of, I need to stop, I need to knock this off, I need to stop drinking, I need to stop eating addictively, I need to, you know, need to cease this bleep has to stop. Anyway, sorry. Anyway, but both in the immediate sense of the addiction, but also in the, you know, obviously the broader context of our spiritual predicament as bamboo.
Right.
Sorry.
And I think too, you know, the common philosophy of Buddhism is pretty much the same, whether you're Jodo Shinshu or Zen or Shingon. I mean, it's the same. The basic philosophy doesn't change. So, and I think that framework, that common worldview, let's say, is what you're going to find most directly related to any kind of recovery program. So I don't think there's, you know, any problem. Well, obviously there's no problem, but I'm saying there's no reason that I see why, you know, a Jodo Shinshu Buddhist couldn't attend, you know, a Zen recovery group, or vice versa. Or, a lot of times these recovery networks are not, they might not even be one denomination. They might be multiple people, collaborating, cooperating. It's not necessarily, only Jodo Shinshu or only Buddhist. I mean, you could have interfaith cooperation as well. So in terms of like the line, I don't think there is a line. It's you need to find what works for you, and then what. And also, I don't think we should be putting Jodo Shinshu on some sort of like in some sort of off
separate
box.
I agree. Because
it's Buddhism, right?
It is Buddhism. Yeah,
it's a different. It's one. Because every denomination, every sect of Buddhism has its own perspective, its own unique practices, and so on. But they're all Buddhism. We're all.
So in that sense, I agree. I completely.
I don't think we should be putting Jodo Shinshu in a sort of. Now, I mean, we do have, of course, a unique point of view based on absolute other power, right?
Exactly.
That is
where.
But I don't think, I mean, if you find, I was looking at a Theravada monk who was discussing, giving I think in the United Kingdom, he was doing a workshop on recovery, and, and it's the same underlying philosophy, right? It's Buddhist, the worldview doesn't change. So I don't think there's any problem with, finding what works for you, whether and it doesn't even have to be, if a non-spiritual path works better for you, then that's good, that you should do that. You don't even have to, I would say, necessarily,
Buddhify it.
I mean, I think
Dharmify it. You don't even have to Dharmify it I do.
I think, well, I think having a community is helpful. And if it's a spiritual community where you're on the same page, more or less spiritually, or you share a certain amount of beliefs. I mean, I think I could see that could be supportive, and could be, like the Vista Buddhist Temple program might be a good program if you're a Jodo Shinshu Buddhist, because it's, it's a Jodo Shinshu.
Yeah, it's obviously,
So, I mean, I don't think, and even, it's perfectly, there's nothing wrong with studying other Buddhist traditions and even practicing them as part of that study. I know.
Well, that's what I meant when I say, if you were invited to a Zen temple, you're there. You're there. You're certainly there to learn, like, how they do things. What is the, what is the, you know what I mean? To add to your knowledge of Buddhism, add to your knowledge of the teachings. So listen to the Dharma. You're there. You're still there for all the same reasons somebody else would be. You just, if you're actually practicing the Zazen, say, it's not you're not doing it because you think it's going to make you enlightened. You're not doing, it's not going to make you enlightened. You know that it's, you're not capable of practicing it in a way that it would affect any kind of change as far as your karmic destiny, say, if I can put it that way, anyway. But that it won't bring you to enlightenment won't even not one iota toward enlightenment. As long as you understand that, then all the reasons you're there are good. They're all it's a part of deep wisdom. But do you see what I'm saying? You look like you're frozen. You froze there for a second.
Did I freeze briefly?
Yeah. Can I just quickly say something? I just wanted to come back to the thread we started on about the morality aspect of things. Yeah. So I know with Buddhism, it's a different approach, I'd say. Ethics in Buddhism is a very different approach than other religions, and other methodologies of understanding that. So I suppose the way I should say that is, for me, this is for me personally, I believe that it is, if I'm going to be in keeping with if I'm going to try to be in keeping with the principles of humanity, justice, propriety, the things that Shinran and Renya talk about as our guidelines for things, then I must try to stop. I must try to stop my addiction and stay stopped. And I have stopped and I'm staying stopped. But you see what I'm saying? Like, for me, I can't live by the principles. Yeah, I can't live by the principles. If I'm, if I'm an active, food addict or active drunk, those are basically my two. My main, I should say this, I don't mind people knowing this, is that I've had, food addiction is, and I've talked about this before with lots of people, and in my videos and things. So it's not a big thing. And maybe secondarily alcohol, I think if I didn't have the food, if I didn't have the food, addiction, quote unquote, then, that probably would have been, the drink would have been much more predominant, but it's kind of more secondary, maybe a close second, maybe a distant second, depends on but it's definitely those two things, they needed to stop. And and in the past I've been smoking. I've been a smoker. I've smoked for about 20 years, and stopped to that. And to me, just in so many ways, I just can't see that living. I know Amida, as far as the Amida Dharma and the Dharma of the teaching of Jodo Shinshu. Whether you're drinking or not drinking, or whatever you're doing, if you're a total glutton, and not stop to that, like I was, and I use those terms, those just for me. I call myself a former glutton, former drunk. That's how I, and secondarily former drunk. That's how I refer to myself. That's just for me. But, and I know that in Jodo Shinshu, you can be saved by Amida, whether you're an active glutton or an active drunk or not. Like, it doesn't matter. Amida accepts whatever you're doing, as long as the process of Shinjin and settled Shinjin occurs, then you're in the state of non-retrogression, and at the end of this life, you're going to Pure Land and immediately become a Buddha. So it's, whether that can happen, whether you're, whatever you're doing. But for me, the two things here, for two things. One, for me to, how Honen talks about, in the context, I think, of marriage, mostly, he said, live in a way that allows you, live in whatever way allows you to say Nembutsu. If you need to be single, to say Nembutsu, be single. If you need to be married, if marriage supports that, then be married. If you can't be in society, that it wasn't just marriage. It was, if you can't be in society and say Nembutsu, then be a wanderer. Do you know what I mean? Become a monk or a wanderer, or whatever. I can't remember the exact. But so two things. That's one thing. For me to live in a way that allows me to say Nembutsu, I need to not. For me to not to truly listen deeply, and I know Amida enables that, but for me to show up, you know what I mean? For me to be disciplined, to have some discipline about listening to Dharma, reading the Dharma text, reading the teachings of our Dharma masters, engaging, having a social connection with someone like yourself, to be able to have a Dharma dialogue, and with other people now, like couple of Dharma brothers that I do on a, maybe at this point bi-monthly basis, meet via Zoom, and there's other people now wanting me to call them, and wanting to just have a Dharma dialogue with me. Do you know what I mean? Just as a fellow person on the path, not. But for me to be able to do all those things and to be immersed in the Dharma, and as I am now. So, and I say that, to me, it means, in order to live in a way that enables you to say Nembutsu, because that's all those things are in saying the Nembutsu. It's not just, you're not just saying the Nembutsu when you're saying the Nembutsu, it's the whole, so like
it's a good guideline. It's a good guideline.
So for me to live in a way, for me to live in a way that allows me to say Nembutsu, I need to be, I need to not be, a glutton. I need to not be a drunk. You know what I mean? And I need to completely cease cease unnecessary, unhealthy eating. And I need to see, and other accompanying behaviors, like, purging with running, or purging with exercise, or purging with, not to put it too disgusting point, but purging with vomiting or laxatives or whatever, all the things that go along with, quote unquote, eating disorder. I need to not be doing any of those things. And I also need to not be drinking at all. All those things need to be, for me, to say Nembutsu and be part of this life in a properly. I need to not be, doing those things. Full stop. End of discussion for me. Anyway, and then the other part of it is, so then while I'm doing that, and with the guidelines from Shinran and Renyo about living by the principles of humanity, justice, propriety, there's several things I've read about how they point to. I need to also, I can't, if I'm an active glutton and an active drunk, I cannot live by those principles. Not even close. Do you know what I mean? Not even close. It's just you see what I mean? For me, it's that simple. So that's when I say immoral, when I use the, word, because there is I think with Buddhism, it's a different approach, but there's still ethic. There's an ethic.
Oh, certainly. Yeah.
You should be trying not to be a selfish, self-indulgent a-hole. You know what I mean? You should, you know what I mean? Like, to be a Buddhist, you can't just be. Do you see what I mean? So,
well, there's value in being, acting morally, doing the right thing, right? Avoiding, as it says in the sutra, not that we can do this perfectly, but avoiding actions that harm to oneself or to others or to both, and then doing actions that bring well-being to oneself, to others, or to both. And I think it's interesting, note that oneself is included. It's not only, it's actions that bring harm to me are, in other words, self-harming actions are also not good, not positive in Buddhism, not ethical. So Buddhism has a very solid ethic that can be universally applied, to anyone, anything, anywhere. So my only thing was, I think sometimes when people hear the term morality, they think of something completely different.
Because it's
depending on the ground.
Possibly in other religions, I'm not saying true religion, not the true teaching of other religions, but even to that, even other religions, even in their truest sense, it's not the most healthy approach to morale. Like, the way they come to their moral teaching is not necessary, or the way it's executed, as it were, the way it's kind of is not necessarily healthy.
It depends. I mean, again, you and I were raised in the Anglo-Protestant tradition, so God, big stick,
No, the interesting thing is, the interesting thing is now, as a very, I would categorize myself as, though I am a bamboo, I would categorize myself as kind of, I'm a devout Buddhist, not in the sense I'm a devotee, not in the sense that but it's a very important part of my life, and I'm, completely immersed in it, and dedicated to it, and made the decision that this is it for my life, for this, so the so as a Buddhist now, I may not agree with the way that morality was taught and executed and kind of carried out and tried to be inculcated into people in the way of my upbringing. But the actual, what they were trying to bring about in the person, I do agree with. I do agree. I do kind of think that as a Buddhist, you should be personally responsible for your actions, and you should be, do you see what I mean? And have that internalized, and also have consequences for your actions, and should accept that, especially if we look at our karmic teachings, and we take, and Buddhists, I think, take that to another level, because we do take responsibility for all of it, even stuff we can't know about. We take that as our karmic, our karmic past. We take full responsibility for that, both individually and collectively. But so kind of, anyway, what I'm trying to say is that, while there was not some of the most healthy aspects of my upbringing, to say the least, in the religious sense, I do agree with some of the, what's the word I'm looking for? Some of the end goal that they're trying to inculcate in someone, what they're trying to achieve as far as
were good.
And it is important. The ethic,
one big one.
Yeah, sorry. Anyway, sorry, Carter.
Well, I think that, how to put it, Abrahamic, I guess, maybe, I don't know. Well, Christian certainly, but Protestant most definitely. Has a somewhat obsessive focus on sexual ethics to the exclusion of other more important things, and that's absent in Buddhism, of course.
Definitely.
People bring it with them as baggage and
true. Yeah, no, I agree.
I remember,
I think Buddhism is even more across the board with it all. It's more comprehensive about someone's, you know what I mean, the ethics. I think it's not a pick and choose. It's not a pick and choose. It's not a pick and mix when it comes to Buddhism about how you should live and the ethics. It's not a well, we're gonna come down on certain types of sexual behavior, but we're not going to worry about those shellfish that people are eating. Sorry, I couldn't resist that.
On the topic of
the kind of pick and mix kind of approach to morality that other religious paths may choose. It's not, what I'm trying to say is it's not there in Buddhism. Buddhism, you have to look at everything. Everything is looked at, and everything is on the table.
Yes. I was remembering Alan Watts, Alan Watts. He was originally an Anglican minister, and he gave it up and started, introducing a lot of Eastern philosophies and so on, and explaining Eastern philosophy.
But he's great. I've listened to a lot of his on YouTube. Over the years, I've listened to a lot of Alan Watts. He's just enjoyable to listen to. Whatever topic he's talking about, the voice, the way, the humor, Anyway, sorry.
He's good at explaining concepts. But anyway, I was listening to a talk of his, and he said, the minister, was talking to, I guess, well, he was talking about his upbringing in the very strict, Anglo Protestant upbringing that he had. And he said, whenever you were told to shun immorality, you knew exactly what they meant. They didn't mean, defrauding your employees. I laughed at that.
That's funny. That is so Alan Watts. That's fantastic. Yeah, because you didn't even need to say it. You didn't even need to. You just, what I mean. What it's, what is so funny. Yeah. So true. It's so true.
Yeah.
So
I think Christians now, in the way Christianity has sort of been, evolving, let's say, I think people are really getting back to like what Jesus said about stuff, like not throwing stones, and I mean, there's a lot that Jesus talks about, and there's topics that he doesn't talk about so much, and so I think people are really kind of,
well, you gotta go to the Gospel of Thomas for that. for this for the stuff he doesn't say in the Gospels, in the four, canonical. Right. Oh, you got to go to the Gospel of Thomas for the stuff he doesn't say. Anyway, sorry, could little additional religious humor.
But yeah, I mean, I think Buddhists, there is personal choices involved. I know my sensei doesn't drink alcohol. And when asked about it, he read from the fifth precept. He said, well, originally, the rules that Shakyamuni gave for lay people, you're supposed to not, you should abstain from alcohol. But he doesn't never, that's a personal choice that he made, right? And he doesn't point that to other people and say you shouldn't, right? And I, on the other hand, if I'm at a party or whatever, I will usually have a beer or two. It's not, and that's my personal choice. Although I do think we can both agree that anything excessive should be avoided.
Yes.
And Rainier was the same. He said we don't make a rule that you can't drink at all. But if you're having, if you're getting totally drunk so that you can't even explain what the Nimbutsu is all about, then that's the problem.
Yeah, exactly. So that's another reason that, he actually addresses that. So this is something I think this is a good kind of start, just to get kind of everything on the table, like all the threads and some discussion of this. I think maybe we could do some more sort of episodes on this. Maybe do one in Buddhism, kind of. Yeah. We'll go through what is the problem of addiction or craving. Maybe do one on what's the problem, and then maybe one on what's the solution, kind of thing. Do you see what I mean? And then do you see what I mean? Maybe bring in.
Yeah, it's a big topic. I don't know if I am qualified to.
Well, all I'm saying is for the problem, let's just talk about craving, so for the next episode. Okay, so what is the problem of addiction? Well, it's the problem of craving. Right. So let's just talk about it from a Buddhist standpoint. Like we went through the Four Noble Truths. That kind of is a good, that is kind of the solution, the ultimate solution, but also you can bring it to a micro level with addiction, So, but anyway, maybe the next episode we'll talk about, what is the problem, craving, and then we'll go through that in Buddhism, what that's all about, desire, craving, all about, and also, obviously bring in the not just the Buddhist, but also our, the Jodo Shinshu kind of context of that. And then the next one do like, what is the solution, and then talk about cessation and the path to getting there, which for us, Amida Buddha has taken, Dharmakara has taken the path for us, done the Eightfold Path, as it were, and is now transmitting, gives us the benefit of that, gives us the, all of that. But anyway, so maybe we could go, do you see what I mean? And kind of approach it that way. It is a big topic. There's so many different, threads here.
If we're going to talk about craving, because it's not an isolated thing, right? It's one of the links in the chain of the 12 nirdanas. So we'd have to discuss probably some of the different theories. There's a good book. What's it called? A History of Early Buddhism, I think. I'll have to find the book, but I can send it to you. There's actually a PDF. I don't know. Somebody made a PDF, and it's available online. But I'll send it to you. It's a really, really good, very thorough, very easy to read history of Buddhist teaching and thought and philosophy up to the early Mahayana period. So it doesn't actually include Mahayana, but in terms of like what the Nikaya schools of Buddhism all agreed upon and where they differed as well in their approaches. Very, very good book. I'll send it to you. But it has a great discussion of the 12 links of independent origination and how and there's a lot of things that I always thought I knew that turned out I was wrong about those, the 12 links and how they relate to each other. And they're not linear. I always thought that it was like a linear.
It's a linear, no.
It's more complicated. There's a lot of, it's more complicated than that. It's not as simple as I thought it was. So
it's not linear. Sorry. couldn't resist taking on the voice of one of the Bajoran prophets in the wormhole. It's not linear. Anyway, sorry.
But yeah, this is a good discussion. I do think there's obviously things I don't have experience with, like
it's
that kind of thing. So
it's more like just to have a general basis of the Buddhist basis of things, so that people, whatever they choose, this is my approach here, whatever they choose to affect their recovery, whatever that's 12 steps or one of the other secular, the smart recovery or rational recovery or life ring or combination of them, or a Buddhist recovery network, Dharma recovery, whatever, any of the Buddhist recovery, whatever they choose, just to have a discussion of the Buddhist context of this, and specifically a Jodo Shinshu, bring in the Jodo Shinshu kind of flip, as it were, the Jodo Shinshu perspective on it, because I haven't come across a lot of that
well, a lot of it is in Japanese.
I've seen there is one lecture. There is a lecture actually on YouTube. One lecture that I've seen, but it doesn't seem to be
there's
a lot.
Talk by Michael Conway from Otani University. He's actually a friend of mine.
Okay.
We do Skype. I sometimes join in his Skype Dharma studies. We're doing the Koso Wasan, the hymns of the Pure Land Masters. But he did because he has some experience in that, he did a talk for, I think, the Shinshu International Center. It's on YouTube, but maybe it's the video you're talking about, but it's about recovery from a Jodo Shinshu perspective.
Yeah, which I think is really important. And again, the whole reason I'm bringing this up is because I have struggled with and wrestled with this whole thing. How does this fit into the Jodo Shinshu, teaching and Dharma? And, as a Jodo Shinshu Buddhist,
Right.
how do you approach this kind of thing? So
well,
that's why I want to do
answer.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. There's no. Yeah. You have to discover that for yourself. You have to find out how it fits in and make those connections. Because
there's a lot.
But I do know
there's a lot of things I've seen from other Buddhist schools and things, which is good because that gives you get a lot from that. But I just haven't seen a lot from the Jodo Shinshu perspective. That's all. And that could be just because of where that could be because of where I'm looking or not looking, as the case may be over the years. But anyway, that's kind of why I wanted to do this. And also the other thing is I wanted to do this in the context of a bamboo in daily life, because I kind of want to put it in that context, because this is just one aspect among many of the life of the bamboo, and to kind of put it into that perspective of, being an addict isn't that much different from just anybody else who has craving, other than the extremity of, the extremes of it. It still has this, it's the same structure. Do you know what I mean? The desire and the craving, it's the same structure. It's just goes to an extreme, So anyway, that's
and part of it is, and this is a problem generally with Jodo Shinshu, not with Jodo Shinshu, but with discussing Jodo Shinshu, is that a lot of the material that's out there is language walled, let's call it, because it's all in Japanese. And there is, like I'm looking right now at Ryukoku University. They're the university. They started as Nishi Honganji's seminary for priests way back in the Edo period, and now they're a private university in Kyoto. And I'm looking right here. They have a symposium. It's the 18th symposium on drug addiction recovery supports, in Tokyo. And I'm sure that many of the people involved with that are Shinshu, from a Shinshu background, or, possibly even Shinshu priests. I mean, so there's always more than you think there is what I'm trying to say with regard to. And sometimes the problem when we represent Jodo Shinshu in the West is we can only talk about what we know. So it ends up being limited. Kind of like I said, let's trying not to put it in a box of its own kind of, because we're talking about, of course there's going to be, Shinshu scholars dealing with recovery and drug, but it might not necessarily be in English, it's going to be in Japan. So, but it's great discussion. And I think that pointing, if we can do anything in a discussion like this, it would be to point people who maybe are struggling with those issues, to something that might be helpful to them. And certainly, if someone needs help, they should get help. I mean, there's no question about that.
Agreed. Yeah. So, and when and my approach to it kind of can come off as I take a very hard line with it for myself. So sometimes that will come out that I might be, saying that about others. I'm really not. It's just, this is my approach for me. I have to take I'm pretty tough on myself with it. But, others have to find their own approach to all of that, for what works. But so very good discussion. Thank you so much for for kind of looking into it and being willing to have a discussion now about this, because this is one of my, this could really be part of the Clearing the Channels series, really, because it's been a big issue, And in fact, interestingly, it's one of the things, my trying to find what the Buddhist Jodo Shinshu, well, the Jodo Shinshu take on addiction was how I wound up finding the initial Sangha that I got involved with. Interestingly, in the first place, I was looking for, addiction, Jodo Shinshu, food addiction, and this group came up because one of their discussions was dealing with, oh, there we go. And that's how, you see what I mean? So it was actually a very good, there's an interesting cause and condition there that ripened for me to really finally not be an individual on my own Jodo Shinshu, because up to that point, for a few years at least, maybe longer, I was kind of on my own with it. And then because of that cause and condition ripening, for me searching for Jodo Shinshu, this was back in the noughties, not the early noughties, but probably late noughties, where I found that. But do you see what I mean? So, but it's been a part of my journey, and I obviously still have kind of questions and things that haven't kind of settled that. So, but so thank you so much. I really, really, really super appreciate it. And
yeah, my pleasure. It was good for me too, because it's not a topic that I really done a lot of reading about with regard, Jodo Shinshu and drug recovery, but it certainly is an important issue. And when I did some research, I realized, oh, there's actually a lot out there. But it's not necessarily, there's a lot of, it's often interdenominational. Like I pointed out before, I mean, there's a common world Buddhist framework, worldview within which we as Zen monks, as Jodo Shinshu priests, as, Tibetan Buddhists, interact in the same, the same shared outlook, but just with a different perspective, so to speak.
Yeah. I like what I call I like keeping a big tent perspective on my Buddhism. And, even though I am a Jodo Shinshu Buddhist, I keep a big tent kind of view perspective on. I don't know. Anyway, thank you again. So shall we do some to end this really good discussion?
Always the best part of any discussion.
The best part of waking up is Nembutsu in your mouth. to borrow the Folgers commercial. Anyway, sorry. So.
And on that note, okay. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda Butsu. All right. Thank you, my friend. Great. Have a great evening in your parts of the world.
The next Sunday, I might have something going on, so I'll let you know. Okay. If that turns out to be the case, then we might have to skip and do the following Sunday.
Sounds good.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Enjoy your day.
All right. Take care. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.